nation, religion, government, or national security. Brannon brings the issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon Howse.
And welcome to the broadcast. On this Wednesday night, October 29th, 2025, we are going to have on with us Dinesh D'Souza. He has a brand new film out, a brand new documentary, The Dragon's Prophecy. Dinesh D'Souza. I'm going to play the trailer. We're going to talk about Tucker Carlson, anti-Semitism, Nick Fuentes, Turning Point USA, which seems to still want to platform these kind of people. What's he think of that? The dividing of the MAGA movement, the America First movement, the dividing of evangelical Christians, the rise of replacement theology, and how you have the right and the left, and in the middle is increasingly being pinched. Conservative, Christian thinking people. Dinesh D'Souza tonight. Tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, Truth, social, whatever you do. We need all of your friends to join us tonight. And then we're going to be joined by Trevor Loudon. What is coming up on Saturday, November 1st, or on Monday, November 3rd? I don't know, but as I covered it on radio today with Leo Holman, I'm going to talk about this tonight with Trevor Loudon. Something's afoot. Apparently, the Democrats do not want to open up the government. I guess they have voted now 13 times. I have a clip from Senate Majority Leader John Thune. Apparently, they have voted 13 times to fund SNAP, to open up the food stamps. The Democrats don't want it. Why not? Is this about organized chaos? The change comes from the chaos. Manufactured chaos? Is that what this is about? Is it about creating civil unrest, provoking President Trump, the Insurrection Act, getting things on video footage to use for 2026? Or is it even deeper than that? Is it about fundamentally trying to bring about civil war in America? These people hate our country. What is your pastor? What are pastors and police and politicians doing about this? We're going to get into all this tonight. Play the videos where they're organizing which stores they're going to hit. They're naming the streets. They're naming the times. Something big is coming, and I'm going to tell you what I think it is you should do, what it is you should not do, and also what Christians should be doing when it comes to warning people, including the single mom or the senior adults who might need some help. We need to step up and be leaders in these very troubling and perilous times. Here is a tweet by Elon Musk. Civil war in Britain is inevitable. It seems like that's what the elite want, the globalists. It seems like they're pushing that onto Great Britain. There's been several attacks, stabbings, killings. You have to hear the pleas and cries of a woman calling into a program in London. But it seems like they're doing this to America as well. And we often watch what's happening in London and the UK because America's not far behind. Are you ready? Because you can't count, sadly, on your police, most of your pastors, and certainly the politicians, most of them know. And now we have heavy cargo plane lands in Venezuela tonight. That's right. I'm glad that you came into the studio. It's always great to see you. When you stop in to visit and say hello. Yes, I love you too, sweetheart. Heavy Russian cargo plane lands in Caracas, northern Venezuela. Are we about to have a problem with Venezuela as far as war, another Vietnam? And did you see the fact that Putin, he has come out and said they just tested the Poseidon, a nuclear-capable doomsday torpedo. Well, we've been talking about the Poseidon since at least 2018, and it's in my documentary with Peter Pry, 2019. I want to talk to David Pyne about this because it seems to be tit for tat. President Trump says to Putin, we have a submarine off your coast. Putin now comes out and says, well, we just tested a nuclear-capable submarine, the doomsday torpedo, that could create a massive wall, radioactive tsunami off the East Coast, and also take out part of our nuclear triad, the submarines and carriers as well. This nuclear triad of our missiles, our submarines, planes. This seems to be, increasing. The tit for tat, back and forth. And then we're going to talk with Michael Weiner about the feds cutting interest rates. Where are we headed with that? Even with the decreasing of interest rates and maybe another cut before the year's over, is it going to be enough to cause people to jump into the housing market and buy and stimulate the economy? Or are prices just too inflated from massive manipulation? Maybe the manipulation, as we discussed earlier this week, from the fraudulent Ponzi scheme school bonds that's being reported by Mitch Wexler. All that tonight. Get on board. WorldviewTube.com. Text it, tweet it, email, Facebook, Getter, True Social, whatever you do. Now, before we do that, folks, remember we're brought to you by you. We need your support. WorldviewFoundation.com, WorldviewFoundation.com. Be sure to go to our sponsors page, WorldviewTube.com/sponsors. Support your health and us at the same time with the products Melissa and I take each and every day. That includes Bella Grace. That includes Gatatana. That includes Numi. You know I do this stuff each and every day, folks. I don't just say it. We really take it, okay? I do those things, 3 things every day. Gatatana, Numi, and Bella Grace. WorldviewTube.com/sponsors. Get ready. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what might happen, but make sure you can communicate with family and friends. Get your own satellite phone like I have, okay, at worldviewtalk.com. Get your solar generator so that you can, power the things you need to power. These are not luxury items. These are vital items, folks, and I have them. I'm not promoting anything to you that I don't have myself, all right? Worldviewtalk.com or 1-866-738-3224, 1-866-738-3224. Support us with each purchase, will you, my friends? Again, because we're a network committed to truth, and we're here 24/7, and we'll always break in when it's necessary, as we've done again and again, whether it was on October 7th, 2023, the attempt on the life of President Trump, the murder of Charlie Kirk, the attack of Israel onto Iran. Every time there's a major breaking news story, you know we interrupt even our weekends to come here to the news desk to bring you the news through the lens of a Christian worldview, to keep our people working in the control rooms and pushing it out and producing all the shows. And we don't, by the way, these groups don't pay us to produce their shows, okay? We pay for the production. We pay for the bandwidth. And then, of course, we have a reporter on the ground in Israel. We need your support. Thank you for that. One of the main ways, of course, worldviewfoundation.com. Let's get started. Joining me now is Dinesh D'Souza. He is a filmmaker. As many of you know, he's put out a lot of films, and many say this latest film, The Dragon's Prophecy, is his best yet. You guys know my broadcast partner, Dr. Andy Woods. He's here every Friday for our Middle East update and a regular guest on other programs here. And of course, we carry his broadcast on the weekend. Well, he called me a few weeks ago and he said, Brannon, this is an amazing film. And I said, well, tell me about it. He started telling me about The Dragon's Prophecy. And he came on my broadcast on 74 terrestrial Christian stations nationwide. And he gave a great review of this. And we urged our audience to check it out. He joins us now, the producer, the director, Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on your new film. Many are saying it's probably your best film. Tell us a little bit about it, and then I want to play the trailer, and then I also ask you some questions.
It is a film that is about Israel and Hamas and radical Islam, and also biblical archaeology and biblical prophecy. So it's a bit of a departure from me. My earlier films have in one way or another been about the meaning of America. But this film has a much wider range, and it integrates politics with the Bible. In some ways, it is extremely timely. Tucker Carlson's in the film, and Ted Cruz and Ilhan Omar, and I have a one-on-one with Netanyahu. At the same time, we talk about the ancient battles between the Israelites and the Philistines and biblical prophecies about the end of the world. It's all pulled together in a single tapestry.
Well, with that, let's watch the trailer, then come back and talk about Tucker and Nick Fuentes and the rise of anti-Semitism, the besmirching of people like Tucker Carlson said, the Christian Zionists, I think I dislike them the most. Attack on people that are trying to study the Bible in context. So much to talk about. And the fragment of the America First movement, the MAGA movement. Let's get into all this with Dinesh D'Souza. But first, here's the trailer of the dragon's prophecy.
Then another sign appeared in heaven. An enormous red dragon. Revelation 12:3.
Once again, an armed attack in the Middle East, but this time it's different.
October 7th was the devil's holiday.
It's very hard to believe what happened, even though I was there and seeing with my own eyes and seeing them laughing and killing and having fun with it.
Because if you don't open the door, they are going to kill you and they are going to kill me, so please open the door.
So who are the Jews? Who are the Palestinians? And whose land is it really? Could the fate of the world, of humanity itself, be somehow tied to this place?
The nation of Israel is a resurrected nation. So what if there was going to be a resurrection of another people, an enemy people of Israel? The Bible speaks about this whole war as a dragon representing the enemy attacking a woman representing Israel.
The civilian deaths on both sides represent victories on the part of the dragon.
Hamas did everything within their ability to maximize the civilian casualty.
We came back to a land that was largely barren and empty, and we brought it back to life, and we're going to keep it.
The devil hates the Jewish people because they represent the existence of God.
Because without that Jewish foundation, there is no Christianity.
If we're approaching the end of time, God will reveal himself more and more dramatically.
Speak back through the stones. The story that they've been telling is that Israel is a colonial project. The problem with that is the city of David. We are an inconvenient truth.
Are you aware of any significant archaeological finding that contradicts the Bible?
No.
God's word stands firm. The dragon will not prevail.
Your message here is become a dragon slayer.
Based on Jonathan Cahn's #1 international bestseller, The Dragon's Prophecy. Watch it now or buy the DVD at thedragonsprophecyfilm.com.
Excellent. Dinesh, as we know, the Bible tells us in the book of Revelation that the people will worship the dragon and the beast. They will worship Satan and the Antichrist, the beast. And of course, isn't it interesting that all of this is lining up? A few years ago, I did a whole series, multi-hour series on the convergence of end-time prophecy. One or two of these stories are pretty dramatic in and of themselves. But then when you combine all of these things that are happening at the same time, such as the war against the Jews, the nations that are lining up against the Jews, nations that have made military and economic alliance for the first time in world history, and now are the same coalition that will come against the Jews per Ezekiel 38:39. When we look at the development of the technology for the mark of the beast, the rise of Christian persecution and Christians being slaughtered, the rise of Islam, interfaith dialogue, people in the America First MAGA movement even defending Islam, but attacking the Jews, even after the tragedy of October 7th, and they still defend Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and CARE. And I could keep going on down the list of all of these things that are converging at one time. And isn't it something that here's this little country that has come back together, fulfilling the prophecy of the dry bones, returning to being a nation, returning to their Hebrew language, returning to the shekel, returning to being a nation that harvests up to 6 crops a season in the desert, becoming a mighty fighting force, all that the Bible said would occur. And yet here are you and I simply laying out the Bible. And now we're being attacked by some of the so-called biggest names at one time in the conservative movement. if we're not in these, as you would say, last days or the dragon's prophecy era, wow, what else could be laying the foundation?
This is right on, as you just said. The Bible predicts that in the end times, there will be a kind of rising temperature, not only of hostility, hatred, violence toward the Jews, but also toward the group that Jonathan Cahn calls the spiritual Israelites, which is the Christians. And sure enough, we see Christians being persecuted, Christians being beheaded, and a lot of hostility to Christianity, even in the European and American lands of where Christianity was sort of first disseminated and first incubated and spread. So all of this is a confirmation of biblical forecasting, and in a quite stunning way. So what the film does is it really begins with about 10 to 12 minutes of riveting footage, most of it never seen before by the public, of October 7th. So it puts you face to face with evil, because of course this footage is not my footage, it's not even Israel's footage, it's taken by Hamas. So you see October 7th not from the point of view of the victims, but the point of view of the attackers. And then the film pulls back and it discusses the nature of good and evil. It goes into fundamental questions like, who are the Jews? Who are the Palestinians? Are there ancient biblical parallels for the battles we see today? And then, of course, the movie moves into biblical archaeology, which authenticates and ratifies the scripture, showing that all these biblical figures like Pontius Pilate and the high priest named Caiaphas and the prophets Jeremiah and Isaiah, King David, all these guys who are in the Bible, but kind of only in the Bible for thousands of years, and now they are jumping out of the Bible and into the pages of history via the pathway of archaeology. So the film it kind of moves between what's happening in the world right now, like ripped out of the headlines. It moves to topics that are of the widest and most profound significance.
And yet, here we're told over and over by people, including this week, Tucker Carlson interviewing Nick Fuentes, saying horrific things about the Jewish people. Tucker Carlson talks about his absolute, appears to be, hatred of Christian Zionists, which is not Christianity at all, he says, which is not in the Bible. I don't think Tucker knows the Bible at all. He's welcome, and I've invited him on my broadcast to come on live so he can't be edited. We'll have a Bible quiz, a Bible debate. That won't go well for him. These guys clearly don't know the Bible. Here we have Revelation chapter 21, verse 12, the 12 walls, or the 12 tower gates, I should say, of the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. The eternal city now, heaven and earth have passed away. We have the New Jerusalem coming down for the new heaven, the new earth from God. And the 12 tower gates have the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. And then the foundations have the names of the 12 apostles. Here we have two programs used by God. The Jews, who are in unbelief today, many of them, and so we have to be patient with them. But the program of God using the Jews, Israel, the 12 tribes, and the apostles who lay down the foundational doctrine of the church. And it's going to be memorialized for all of eternity. My guess is, Dinesh, people like Tucker Carlson do not know what I just said. They don't know Revelation 21, verse 12 and verse 14. What do you think these guys even know the Bible?
I don't think they either know it or care. Let me tell you what I think they want to do. Their objective is to break the New Testament away from the Old. They want to make the case that Christianity has nothing to do with Israel or the Jews. They dismiss the idea that Jesus is Jewish. In fact, they'll tell you Jesus is not Jewish. He maybe used to be Jewish, but he was the first Christian. Now, this is itself somewhat comical because Jesus, the movement called Christianity was founded later in the book of Acts, and of course only took institutional form centuries later. So Jesus was a Jew. He bathed in the pool of Siloam. He walked the pilgrimage road to the temple. He taught in synagogues in places like Capernaum and Magdala. The only scriptures that Jesus had were, of course, the Hebrew scriptures, which is to say the Old Testament. So all of this is all rather obvious, but I think the guys like Tucker and Nick Fuentes and so on, what they really want to do is they want to drive a wedge politically between the United States and Israel. And they also want to drive a wedge right in the middle of evangelical Christianity. They're trying to peel away evangelical Christians from being supporters of Israel. They want the only people to support Israel to be the Jews, so they can then go and say, well, listen, you people are not America first. You're all Israel first. You have dual loyalty. You are traitors.
Now, I want to play a clip of a much younger Tucker Carlson and listen to what he says, and then tell me, what do you think happened along the way? Did he really change his mind, or was he influenced or paid to start, well, basically going against what this younger Tucker Carlson is actually saying and criticizing? And he was mentioning Patrick Buchanan. Watch a little bit of this, please.
I mean, this is part of the sad thing about Pat Buchanan, as far as I'm concerned. And just to restate, I mean, Pat does raise issues that I think are important. I mean, I think that, the sovereignty of the American military, et cetera, I mean, these are not just crank issues. But unfortunately, Pat Buchanan raises them in a way that I think is discredited. And when attacked, he can always fall back on the line, well, the tiny cabal that controls American politics doesn't like me because I speak truth to power. This is actually, incidentally, almost verbatim what he said the other day, that I offend the plutocracy, that I'm a wanted man by the inside the Beltway people, and in every sense cast himself as a victim who is sort of a Karen Silkwood of politics, someone who's so truthful that he's being hunted down by the conspiracy that runs Washington. I mean, it's all a bit much. Maybe Pat Buchanan just says things that are kind of kooky, and that's why he's being criticized. It's perfectly valid to question America's relationship with Israel. Israel has a lobby. It's perfectly fair, as far as I'm concerned, to beat up on Israel's lobby. But I don't think that's the reason that Buchanan is being labeled an anti-Semite. It's this kind of, as I've said, this relentless bringing up topics related to Judaism. I mean, famously, Pat, always beats up on Goldman Sachs, but never Morgan Stanley. I mean, it's really hard to. There is no point at which Pat Buchanan has held a press conference and said, I really don't like the Jews. I think they're a sinister force in America. But I think, and it took me years to come to this position. I mean, I'm not throwing the term anti-Semite around. But you reach a point when you say, well, gee, here's a guy who has gone out of his way to defend Demjanjuk and other accused Nazi war criminals, who's constantly attacked Israel, who's attacked American Jews for supporting Israel unduly, who's implied that American Jews push America into wars in which non-Jews die. There really is, and again, I'm not hysterical on this subject, but I do believe that there is a pattern with Pat Buchanan of needling the Jews. Is that anti-Semitic? Yeah. I mean, after a while, you conclude it is, in some sense, anti-Semitic. I mean,
what happened to that guy, Dinesh?
Well, he became that other guy. In other words, the Pat Buchanan that he is describing is, in fact, Tucker Carlson today, isn't it? And it's almost like he forecast his own future self. It's really eerie, isn't it? Now, of course, the other question, which I don't know the answer to, I wish I did, is what caused young Tucker, to become old Tucker, the very Tucker that he once ridiculed and denounced. Now, some people think it's the Qatari money. I don't think that makes sense, because Tucker comes from a wealthy family. Tucker has a huge following, so he can easily monetize that. He doesn't need Qatar to pay his electric bill. So I think that whether or not he's getting money from Qatar, which I don't know, that cannot be a full and adequate explanation of what is up with him. I think there's got to be something bigger and probably more sinister at work.
Okay, sinister as in, I don't know, did he want to get into the CIA? I think Putin mocked him about that, right? Is this guy a tool? Is he part of the deep state? Is he being utilized to divide the MAGA movement? Because everywhere I turn, I see coalitions being divided. And I have to wonder if this isn't part of the goal of some power brokers, power elite, to divide every coalition under the sun. They're dividing the MAGA movement, the America First movement. They started out some time ago dividing evangelical Christians, where we used to be strong Christian Zionists. Our schools, our radio networks, our Bible colleges, our publishers were historically known for being strong Christian Zionists. That doesn't mean we defend everything the Israeli government does any more than we defend what our federal government does all the time. But we understand as Christians God's program for the Jewish people, distinct and separate from the church, as we refute replacement theology. Yet now, many of those once historically traditional dispensational Christian Zionist publishing houses, radio networks, TV networks, and seminaries, they have embraced everything that is the exact opposite. And so we see this division. So whether it's the division in evangelicalism, MAGA, America First, wherever it is, every time we turn, our own families are now divided, whether it's over COVID, whether it's over Trump, whether it's over Israel, anti-Semitism. It seems as though there's a great effort to make sure the right, people on the right and the conservative social right are so divided that we are no longer an obstacle to their complete demise of America.
Let me frame that a slightly different way. There's quite clearly a red-green alliance between the cultural left on the one hand and the radical Muslims on the other. A guy like Mamdani embodies this. He embodies both sides of that, right? He's cultural left at the same time as he is an Islamist, I guess we could say. Now, these two groups, the left and the radical jihadis, are not the same. They have different goals, and they cannot inhabit each other's worlds very easily. But they're united in a common hatred. Who do they hate? Well, they hate the Jews and Israel on the one hand, and they hate the Christians and the principles of America and the West on the other. So it would seem obvious that America and Israel, the Christians and the Jews, should come closer together on purely strategic grounds, leaving aside the Bible, come together to resist this political coalition of the red and the green. So Tucker knows all this. So what sense does it make from the right to come and try to put a wedge, to disrupt this natural coalition and turn Israel and America into enemies and Christians and Jews into enemies? I mean, who would benefit from that? Answer: the jihadis and the cultural left. So Tucker has now become, whether he sees it or not, a tool of the cultural left and of the jihadis. In his most recent newsletter, he praises Qatar. He says, I don't know why everyone's going after Qatar. He's become an apologist for Qatar. At other times, he's even praised Sharia law. Now, one of the lines in the movie continues to haunt me. Jonathan Kahn says, basically, the devil is the first anti-Semite. And it is the project of the devil, ultimately, to lead the war against the Jews. So when you ask me, like, what is motivating Tucker? In some ways, I think it has to be connected to the dragon, the devil himself. Now, I'm not saying that Tucker is like consciously a tool of the devil, but I don't think that Hamas is consciously a tool of the devil either. One of the points of the film is that just as God uses people, whether it's Abraham, whether it's Moses, the devil also uses people to his own nefarious ends. I was on with Roseanne Barr on her podcast, The Comedian, and she was reminding me that Tucker talked recently, not that long ago, about being attacked by a demon. He was not kidding.
Oh,
and he says, the demon scratched me, it injured me. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if you're not lying or kidding, which I don't think you are, what you're really saying is that you had a portal that was open for some sort of a demon to enter into you. And so anyway, Roseanne was like, this guy needs an exorcism, and so we didn't want to take that too far. But I don't put that out of bounds, that there is something spiritually nefarious going on with this guy.
I think you're absolutely right. And I remember seeing that clip when we've played it. I want to ask you about America's October 7th, which I think is unfortunately coming. But first, Turning Point USA. The day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, we were live on the air on 74 Christian terrestrial stations. I was told in my ear, Charlie Kirk has just been shot. I stopped everything, turned to the computer, saw the footage, unfiltered, made me sick to my stomach as it shocked everybody. And of course, we covered it nonstop for hours that day and for the next several weeks. We thought there were many wonderful things that came out of his memorial service, the presentation of the gospel, and so many other wonderful things. But the last few weeks, I become very concerned. And I said to my radio audience that we really need to pray because there's a lot of college students that are at stake here. And if they don't stop platforming certain people very soon, we are going to lose a generation spiritually, biblically. And I said, if this doesn't stop, very soon, Turning Point USA, I will be calling it Turning Point into Apostasy USA. Do you at all share my concern that they need to figure out what their theology and doctrine eschatology is and get on the right footing, whether it's interviewing Doug Wilson or platforming Tucker Carlson, these Reconstructionists, the Dominionists, the replacement theology people? I watch it, I'm like, their worldview is so schizophrenic. Do they even know what they believe? Charlie's gone. He seemed to be the compass. I know he was interviewing some of these people, maybe to give them a platform, to debate them, to figure them out. But if they don't figure out real quick where they're going, this is going to be a real problem for this next generation that are following them.
Yeah, I think we need to make a key difference between discussion and debate, which I favor. I debated Nick Fuentes, of all people, a month or two ago. And my reason was, look, Nick was going around saying, I'm the alpha male. Everybody's scared of me. Ben Shapiro's scared of me. Charlie Kirk's scared of me. So I'm like, I'm not scared of you. And so it was a very informative debate. And I think a lot of Nick's supporters were like, wow, we thought Nick would kind of come in guns blazing, but things haven't worked out kind of the way we hoped. I think the fear here is this. There is clearly an effort to kind of raid Turning Point and almost desecrate it, right? I mean, here's Candace basically saying the Turning Point itself may be implicated in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I mean, she alternates between Trump did it to then saying Turning Point did it. And then when she's tired of that, she says a Mossad agent may have climbed through a pipe and maybe he did it. So you get from Candace and what I call the CIA, the Candace Intelligence Agency, one idiotic theory after another. But Turning Point is definitely on the receiving end. Candace has even implied that Charlie is closer to her than he is probably to his own wife. So all of this, I think, is being put out there, and it cannot be seen in anything other than a nefarious light. Then you have Tucker Carlson, who is actually the headliner of Turning Point's upcoming December conference. And Charlie Kirk, I just released a couple of texts where Charlie Kirk is talking to me, and he goes, this Nick Fuentes guy is complete vermin. He goes, do not platform him. Charlie's even upset that I debated the guy. Even though Charlie conceded, I won the debate. But Charlie's point is it doesn't matter. Don't amplify this guy. He's bad news.
And yet they're going to amplify Tucker now after all he said.
Yeah, and Tucker does this like devotional interview with Fuentes. I mean, it's absolutely sycophantic. He doesn't really ask him any tough questions. You can tell he's trying to mainstream Fuentes. It's almost like the sly anti-Semite is trying to legitimize the open anti-Semite so that the sly anti-Semite or the covert anti-Semite doesn't seem so anti-Semitic after all. All of this really bad stuff is going on in that conversation. And it's almost like Tucker saying to Turning Point, guess what? I'm already in the driver's seat. You've already announced me as your main speaker. So F you. I'm going to do whatever I want with Nick Fuentes. Doesn't matter what Charlie Kirk might think. I dare you to cancel me.
Wow. All right. Closing minutes here, Dinesh. Let's talk about America's own October 7th. You maybe do or don't know, we have our own reporter on the ground in Israel. We have now for a few years, and we get regular updates. A few weeks, a couple months before October 7th, 2023, that horrific day, I was on the air, and I was pretty hot under the collar. And I did this twice where I really got hot under the collar because I felt like Benjamin Netanyahu was not being as strong as he should about his own country and the defense of his own country. And I was really urging him, stop worrying about what Joe Biden thinks. Stop kissing the ring of Joe Biden. Do what you need to do to protect your people. I'm concerned you guys are not protecting your people to the level you should. I'm just saying that as a guy who's only got open source information, right? And watching and studying, and my reporter on the ground. Well, then October 7th happens. And then it wasn't long before I was saying, now I'm concerned about Judea and Samaria, i.e. the West Bank, as it's derogatorily called. And now we have President Trump saying, we're not going to let you annex the West Bank. I'm like, wait a minute, how about Israel first, America first, Israel first? They should be in charge of their own land. We got to be careful and make sure we're not pressuring them, dividing the land, bringing God's judgment, etc. And now I'm concerned and have been since October 7th, 2023, because Hamas said, we're going to do this again and again, and we're bringing it to America. I'm very concerned about an October 7th style event in our country, them using first responder uniforms, police uniforms, these SIM card servers, SIM cards, sending out millions of diverse, texts that distract or false threats, swatting, and then have where they SWAT and claim a school or a hospital. You have the first responders run to one side of town, boom, they attack the other side of town. Then the first responders run over there, the second county over, they run to back them up, and then there's an attack in the second county. The third county runs to help the second county, and there's an attack in the third county. I mean, we could be seeing major attacks, and yet I don't think Americans and many of our law enforcement even are thinking outside the box. And I think it's because in America, we don't think in many ways as evil people, but we have to understand evil to prepare for evil. What are your thoughts on our own October 7th in America?
Well, first of all, I couldn't agree more with what you just said. I will say that the difference between us and the Israelis is that the Israelis are kind of like people who live in a really bad neighborhood, which is to say, people who live in a bad neighborhood are always looking over their shoulder. They're situationally aware. They know they cannot leave their car unlocked. They also know they need to set their alarm at night. And even if they do that, they know they have to sleep with one eye open. And even then, the Israelis got caught off guard on October 7th. So now you take America. We are much more slovenly. We don't live in a bad neighborhood in general, so we've become very complacent. It's very easy to see all our preparations, it seems like after 9/11, were merely focused on trying to prevent an identical attack. Oh, make sure you take your shoes off, or make sure you go through the TSA, as if to say the terrorists are so dumb that they would essentially try the exact same playbook. You've just described a bunch of other playbooks that they could use, and I'm sure they will use when the time is right for them. So yes, I am very concerned that, and especially with our porous border, who knows the kind of cells that have infiltrated the United States. You can be sure the Biden people were paying no attention to any of this. And so the conditions would seem to be ripe, again, when the time is appropriate for something like 9/11 or worse.
Final question, Dinesh. You have the people on the left, the red-green axis, the Islamists, the Marxists, as you've already referenced. We have what's going on now on the right, as we've discussed. And in the middle, we have a pincher, the pincher strategy. And in the middle stand people like you, me, and many others that are singing from the same songbook or reading the same Bible and teaching it as honestly and accurately as we can, using scripture to interpret scripture, studying the New Testament, running over to the Old Testament to understand what's being described, running back to the New Testament. We're really being approved workmen, who need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of God with the old and the new together. And we're getting pinched. And I want you to speak to our audience tonight who maybe at times find themselves discouraged because there are attacks on the left, there are attacks in the middle or on the right. And here we are in the middle trying to be faithful, but we're starting to find ourselves becoming a smaller and smaller group and opened up and set up for persecution. What is your closing encouragement tonight?
Well, I'll do a warning and then a point of encouragement. The warning is this: the Democratic Party, like the Republican Party, used to be very pro-Israel. This was the case when I came to America as a teenager in 1978. Throughout the 80s, the 90s, both parties were pro-Israel. Now, the Democratic Party has by and large surrendered to the Islamists and to the jihadis, and it has gone the other way. Wouldn't it be tragic if the Republican Party follows suit, so that both parties are now united once again, but this time not in being pro-Israel, but in being anti-Jewish and anti-Israel? I certainly pray that that does not happen. I hope it doesn't happen. Now, I don't think it's going to happen. Here's why. I think we all inhabit a world, particularly those of us these days in media and social media, we are seeing a sort of a frenetic segment that is extremely loudmouthed on these issues, thinks that they control. I keep hearing, Trump is losing the base, he better get with the message, and so on. No, the people who are on X, the people who are on TikTok, they're not the base. The base of the Republican Party is the 45% of this country that votes for any Republican candidate that has the letter R after their name. Now, Trump does have to get from that 45% to 51, but that extra 6%, which he can get from here or there, that's not the base. That's the people who you need to get you to the finish line. So I am concerned about these rising tides of anti-Semitism. I am concerned about the influence of people like Tucker. I do think that they are doing a sneak attack on MAGA and on the Republican Party because they don't take responsibility for their own views. Candace camouflages them as kind of, she's basically like the Pink Panther. She's doing like journalistic investigation and supposedly deputizing all her viewers to be FBI agents with her to solve the Charlie Kirk case. And with Tucker, he pretends to be, I'm just asking questions, although all the questions produce exactly the answers that he's looking for. So this is a very, I would say, sly and underhanded effort to move the Republican Party and MAGA into a more anti-Jewish and anti-Israel direction. I think the good news is it's not going to happen. Trump's not going to let it happen. Trump is bound to be concerned about what they're doing to fracture MAGA and undermine him. And I think if J.D. Vance goes this way, it's going to be the end of J.D. Vance.
Wow. Well, I want to encourage everyone to go and watch the film. Here it is. TheDragonProphecyFilm.com. The Dragon's Prophecy. Put an S in there, guys. TheDragon'sProphecyFilm.com. TheDragon'sProphecyFilm.com. Dinesh, great having you on with us. Thank you for doing this. Great production work. And I know our audience will enjoy it if they haven't already seen it.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinesh. We'll be right back, folks, right after this break. Do you know about glutathione? You can't live without it. It's a naturally occurring ingredient in your body. But guess what? It starts to decrease around the age of 20. You need glutathione. There are over 165,000 studies on glutathione at PubMed. It detoxes your cells. And we know there are toxins everywhere. In fact, studies have shown glutathione may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Check it out at swishforlife.com. You just put a small 2 caps in your mouth, swish it for about 3 minutes. Then you can swallow it or spit it out. Studies show that this is in your bloodstream within 90 seconds. It's better than an IV. That'll cost you about $250, and it's broken down. But when you swish with it, it is in your body in 90 seconds in its totality. Glutathione, you need it to live. Swishforlife.com. Swishforlife.com. Joining me now is Trevor Loudon to talk about what clearly seems to be an orchestrated national demonstration coming perhaps Saturday or on the 3rd of November. Depends on the social media post you're reading and following. But many on social media now are talking openly about their plans to hit various grocery stores and big box stores. They're naming the stores, they're naming the streets, they're naming the routes they're going to take. It seems highly orchestrated. Well, again, who could be behind this? And what could be the motivation for chaos in our grocery stores and looting and rioting? First, before we go to Trevor, let's go to a quick clip of Senate Majority Leader John Thune on the Senate floor this afternoon. Watch this.
Let me just point out, if I might, that we are 29 days into a Democrat shutdown. And the senator from New Mexico was absolutely right. SNAP recipients shouldn't go without food. People should be getting paid in this country. And we've tried to do that 13 times. And you voted no 13 times. This isn't a political game. These are real people's lives that we're talking about. And you all have just figured out, 29 days in, that, there might be some consequences. There are people who run out of money. Yeah, we're 29 days in. And they've done their best to make sure that a lot of these programs are funded. But at some point, the government runs out of money. 13 times people over here voted to fund SNAP. 13 times they voted to fund WIC. My aching back. Finally realized this thing has consequences.
Yeah, well, the consequences could be huge, and they could be for you and your family, which is why I spent a whole hour on this today on radio. And I am urging my listening friends to be very cautious because you do not want to get caught in any of the melee. Certainly, we don't need children and senior adults caught in this. And of course, the question is, how prepared will your police departments and sheriff departments be? And will they put out warnings in advance telling the thugs and the degenerates and the dark-hearted fools of this country that if you, and the illegals, 59% of them who are on food stamps, if you are engaging in any theft and shoplifting or stealing of food in the store or out in the parking lot from citizens who have bought their groceries or are headed to their car, there are going to be serious consequences. I would also urge police to get on social media along with their sheriffs and urge people not to go out and engage these people. I saw a video today, we'll play it, of a guy saying you try to take his groceries out in the parking lot, he's going to shoot you. Well, that's exactly what the power elite, that's what the anti-Second Amendment folks want. They want to see you engage in that kind of behavior and kill somebody over groceries. It's one thing to use self-defense if you feel your life is at risk or great bodily harm. Another, because someone tries to steal your groceries. And if you do that kind of thing, you're only playing right into the hand of the left to then start putting down more excuses for taking our guns. So, folks, we need to be level-headed about this and realize, and when you see a setup, don't take part. But who could be helping to orchestrate this? Will they get the government going and the food flowing again before the 1st of November? Some of these guys on social media, and there are a ton of the videos, are talking about already starting the shoplifting on Saturday, November 1st. Others are saying it's going to be a big day, November 3rd. We're going to play some of the clips for you, but I want to get a response from Trevor Loudon. Who could be orchestrating such a thing and to what benefit for their agenda? Joining me now is Trevor Loudon of trevorloudon.com. Trevor, have you seen any of these clips out there on social media?
No, I'm looking forward to it, Brannon. I'm a bit out of touch today, sorry.
Okay, before we go to some of them, who do you think benefits from this? Here's Senator Thune saying, look, we've tried to vote on this 13 times on the Republican side. You guys keep stopping it. Are the Marxist Democrats wanting to use, as well as say, the socialist tactic or the Marxist tactic, pressure from above, pressure from below? So you have the Marxists in the party in Washington, and that's the pressure from above. And then the pressure from below, the street people, the agitators, the community organizers, the people that are the cannon fodder. Now, I'm not talking about the person that's fallen on hard times due to the government's inflation that's destroying their wealth. And some people find themselves there and never been on stamps, food stamps, don't want to be on it, want to get off as fast as they can. And yet it's the government in many cases that has pushed them there by destroying our economy and our purchasing power. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people that are able-bodied and go work. They don't want to work. In fact, we have a video, I think, of one gal, Logan, don't we, who's bragging that she's on food stamps because her mother and her grandmother taught her that this is generational. This is their way of life. Then we have the 59% of illegal aliens that are here that are on food stamps. Who do you think is orchestrating this and to what agenda?
Well, on one level, it's the Democrats because they want to do anything they can to embarrass Trump. They'd like to see violence in the streets, just like they actively encouraged the George Floyd riots, which was a Chinese and communist operation. So the Democrats want this, absolutely. And then you'll get the local radical groups who'll be stirring this up, organizing people, Antifa types, communist types, and then you'll have meddling by the Russians and the Chinese who will use social media, TikTok to inflame people to loot stores and inflame people to go after the people who loot stores. Just like the Russians were backing Black Lives Matter in 2020 and backing the opposition to Black Lives Matter. So it'll be a combination of all of the above with the aim of bringing the maximum amount of chaos possible.
And so you believe there are enemies, foreign and domestic, in the country, outside the country, that are agitating for this?
Look, absolutely. They take advantage of every opportunity. You know, whether it's the George Floyd riots or the No Kings protests or the anti-Trump protests of 2017, this will be the Democrats, it'll be the domestic American left coupled with the Russian, Chinese, and Iranian disinformation machines.
And isn't it interesting this is ramping up while we also have Putin saying, look, we have just tested again our nuclear drone, the Poseidon, something we've been warning about since 2018 and in our documentary 2019 that you're in, by the way. We have President Trump saying, yeah, we got subs parked off your coast. Now Putin says, okay, well, I've got my underwater nuclear drone, the Poseidon, that could do some, humongous tsunamis, radioactive, as well as take out a lot of your carriers and submarines that are part of your nuclear triad. So it seems like it's going back and forth. Now we have what is said to be a very heavy Russian cargo plane lands in Caracas amid U.S.-Venezuelan tensions. Supposedly the military is ramping up over there, citizens joining. I don't know, what's going to happen. Are we going to end up in doing strategic strikes from the air and then ground troops in Venezuela? Are we going to find ourselves battling Venezuela, China, Russia, Hezbollah, which are all there in Venezuela? I don't know about you, but this seems like a really good time for a lot of chaos in America to keep us thrown off balance. And then you add in the green of the red-green axis, the terrorists. How do we know that all of this chaos and looting and rioting wouldn't be a great opportunity for the Islamists to use that as cover and camouflage while the police and first responders and everybody are distracted to carry out terrorist attacks? Here's the problem. Whenever you see these kind of things ramping up, most people see only that. They have tunnel vision, and they only see this as an isolated issue. You and I see it as parts of bigger pieces of the puzzle that can be exploited for bigger agendas.
Yeah, this is the old evil empires back: Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua. All of their friends, and coupled with the Islamic world, are all. There's a battle going on. Venezuela is absolutely riddled with weapons aimed at America. They have hollowed out mountains down there. They have everything ready to strike America. This is way worse than the Cuban Missile Crisis of the 1960s. So that's going on. The Ukraine war, the Middle East, Rocket Boy is threatening, Japan. The Russians are building up big military presence opposite Japan as well. They've got a big military presence in the Kuril Islands. So look, nothing is off the table. We could see red, we could see green, we can see, we've got a whole bunch of foreign operators in our country, Russian Spetsnaz, Chinese special forces, cartel types. So, look, we could have a happy white Christmas, or we could have a very, very rough December.
Look at this.
November, December. I'd be surprised if something pretty dramatic doesn't happen in the next few days, put it that way. Because Democrats do not want to solve this. They want to bring this country into chaos.
Look at this. Well, the change comes from the chaos. Saul Alinsky, the change comes from the chaos. Elon Musk today tweeted, "Civil war in Britain is inevitable. Just a question of when." Well, isn't that interesting? Tweeted today, October 29th, 2025, as it seems as though they're pushing us, the power elite, the right and the left, the people on the right and the left, the Tucker Carlsons on the right, the AOCs, etc., on the left. In the middle, we get caught. Here we have a Jewish man, a visibly Jewish tourist from Jerusalem, 59 years old, suffered a brain bleed after being attacked in Midtown Manhattan. Police say a man dressed in black knocked off his yarmulke and then stomped on it, then punched him in the face near this kosher deli. We might have to zoom in on it. It's at the back of the video, toward the back of the video. You'll see him walking along and you'll see this attack happen. What I'm trying to point out here is whether it's in the UK or whether it is in America, we are constantly seeing this kind of thing, the red-green axis, the conflict. And, where it's going to go, I don't know. But isn't it interesting that Elon is talking about a civil war in the UK, whereas we're looking like we might have one here in America. Boom, down he goes.
Well, that's right. And Elon, unfortunately, has a tendency to echo Russian propaganda. I think he's been a little bit fooled by it. So the goal is to get both sides expecting this and just amp up the tensions. It's not hard to get a country into civil war if you're controlling both sides of the discourse. And the communists and the Russians control both sides. You know, they've got the Tucker Carlsons, the alt-right people, the woke right people, the semi-fascists. They've got them pushing for civil war, and they've got the hard left pushing for civil war. And this is like 5% on each side, and we're stuck in the middle. But you know, they can do this. It doesn't take much of a spark to set things off. You know, we've seen this happen many places overseas, and we've seen this with Black Lives Matter, etc. as well. But this is completely organized. It is completely foreign directed, foreign backed. We've got our own homegrown radicals, but they're all dependent on foreign support and foreign help. So we should realize that we are at war with Russia and China right now, and Cuba and Nicaragua, and they're trying to foment a civil war in our territory to weaken us to the point where we're easy meat. You're right, Brannon. We got to show a lot of restraint here. We've got to be as disciplined as we can. We've got to organize food banks. We've got to liaise with our local police. All of these things to try and keep the country as calm as possible and ameliorate the problems. But it still comes back to the Democrats are going to keep pushing this until they get the result they want. So I think Trump's going to have to, the Republicans are going to have to do the nuclear option, maybe a poor choice of words, you know, abolish the filibuster in the Senate. And
Trump is even talking about the Insurrection Act if he's pushed. Let's go to a couple of these clips.
I don't think any of that's off the table. This is a revolutionary. This is an attempt at creating chaos in America, deliberate attempt. Abolish the filibuster, Insurrection Act. I think all of that should be on the table.
Let's go to a few of these clips where people are organizing for what could be Saturday or November 3rd. They're openly bragging about it. There is no apology. They feel entitled. They feel they are on the righteous side, which says a lot about our culture, our country, that people think such. They really think they're on the moral high ground to be involved in looting and stealing and the reverse racism. Folks saying that they're coming for the white guy, the white gal, that you were clutching your purses before, you better really clutch them now. I mean, it's pretty racially charged. And they like to really pump their fist with the communist Black Panther power fist revolution symbol. Watch a few of these clips. Trevor says he has not seen these, so we'll get a response after he watches a couple. Here we go.
Hey, y'all out here crashing out about EBT and like that, baby. That's why I got big purses, big bags. Yeah, I got it all. I don't know why y'all crashing out about EBT, because we can meet at every Walmart, Target, and every grocery store in America and get them running up out there. They can't catch everybody. If it's 5,000 motherfuckers in the store stealing meat and everything else and running up out there, how they gonna catch our? You better be like them that was out there in Philly when they was out there doing all them riots, going on them stores, snatching out big 70-inch TVs and all them shoes and all that. Y'all motherfuckers stop crashing out about this
Yeah, to all the stores, them little corner stores, y'all need to go ahead and take them "We accept EBT" signs down, because in a minute, y'all finna be accepting these hands. I want my snap.
So, y'all, I'm just thinking, I gotta come up with a master plan. They didn't cut my food stamps. I'm down to my last pack of noodles and 2 bars of soap. Something gotta shake. I'm just trying to see when we going to get the groceries. I'm thinking tomorrow a good day. We can start tomorrow. I got a route for this. We gonna start that up in New Temple. We gonna run that to Wesley Chapel, swing that down Bruce B down. We gonna gas up in the city. We with the city, because if we city, them hoes gonna be ready to die out there. So we gonna leave them alone. Bring that up around Brandon. Take that through Riverview. Swing that through Apollo. Depending on what time it is, we could take that clean down Del Mabry. wrap that around town and country, we done. Whole thing is I need a ride. I can't take my car. But I think that's a clean route.
I have a serious question. When are we going to start looting the stores? Because I was stealing before. Now it's full-blown theft. Because what the f*** do you mean no food stamps?
All right, and of course, we had to bleep a lot of that because of all the cursing and swearing. But they're organizing what routes they're going to take. Then they're going to gas up, and then they're going to go down these streets and hit this store. And I don't know. I really don't think this is going to get solved before November 1st because I think the Democrats want it. In fact, I think they've even said if they don't keep this going, some of their biggest donors are going to be very upset with them. So I don't know if that's the George Soros types or what, right?
Well, the Democracy Alliance, which is, a lot wider than George Soros. Everybody blames George Soros. He's like a little pebble in an ocean. He's part of the problem. But this is way bigger than George Soros, and it's connected to Russia and China, as I keep on emphasizing. Well, the big mistake we make, it's all George Soros. When George Soros dies, this will all stop. No, he's just a part of this. He's a cog. This is Russia and China. But, those ones we saw, I'm sure some of these are actors. Some of them are probably genuine, but some of them are actors because you're out there telling people what you're going to do, planning felonies, and posting it online. Well, yeah, I'm sure some of them are genuine because some of them are stupid enough to do that. But also there'll be actors there. There'll be deliberate ones as well amongst the mix, just trying to amp this up. The whole goal is escalation. Escalate the right, escalate the left, trying to radicalize the middle. So it's going to be a mixture of real criminal intent and malicious propaganda intent all mixed in. It's hard to tell one from the other.
And Trevor, I don't know what's going to happen. I have no clue. But I will tell you this. The police need to come out, the sheriffs need to come out in advance and be on social media telling folks what is going to happen if you do this, and then warning the other folks to don't go out there and engage them. Don't go out there and confront them because you're taking the bait. Logan, I want to play the video I played on radio and /TV at 1 o'clock Central Day
exactly
of the guy with the Southern accent talking about what's going to happen if someone tries stealing his groceries in the grocery store parking lot. Because this is what I'm talking about, folks. Okay, this is what I think you don't want to do. I understand the guy's frustration, his passion. Maybe he's just letting off some steam. He wouldn't really do it. But you don't want to be killing people over groceries. The only defense is if you feel your life is at great risk of bodily harm or death. Someone walking up stealing your groceries, that doesn't justify killing them. And if you go down that road, not only are you going to end up probably losing your liberty and freedom in civil lawsuits up the yin-yang, but you're going to be playing into their hand for saying, you see, the MAGA people, the Second Amendment people, they're dangerous. They can't be trusted with weapons. It's not what we want. This is what they want. Watch this and don't do this. Watch.
So you're going to steal my basket full of groceries after I leave the store? Yeah, I don't think so there, Han. I've seen a lot of videos talking about how people's EBT is getting cut off, and so they're going to be stealing groceries straight out of the store. But I've also seen a lot of videos talking about how people are going to grab baskets whenever they come out of the store. That way they're not stealing from the store, they're stealing from an individual. Well, you grab my shopping cart full of groceries that I bought and paid for with my money, and you're going to hear two sounds. There's going to be three sounds. Maybe. There's certainly going to be two sounds. The first sound you're going to hear is me saying, now, Han, that's a bad idea there. Better walk the f*** on. If you don't walk the f*** on, that'll be the next sound you hear. And the third sound, son, I'll hear it. You won't. No, sir. Now, people are going to come back on this video and say, oh, you'd end somebody over a basket full of groceries? Yeah, I would. Because that person that's deciding to steal from me, they've already decided that that's what their life is worth. Well, they made that decision. they made that choice.
Again, I understand people's frustrations, but don't play into that. And I think we need sheriffs and police putting out videos on social media, telling the criminals what's going to happen if you do it, telling the citizens that don't want to be involved in criminality to stay home, stay away, don't confront these people, do not get into it with them. Certainly if they have weapons or guns or knives, walk away. It's not worth a cart full of groceries. But do your grocery shopping in advance and stay away and let us deal with this problem. Unfortunately, many of our police departments have been infiltrated, as we saw the other night. Antifa is now apparently running the Portland Police Department, giving them cover. So sadly, many of your police departments, they got rid of their intelligence divisions years ago. They have no clue who the imam is at the local mosque. They had no idea the terrorist-tied imams they bring in to speak. They have no clue what's going on with the Marxist groups. Sadly, most of the police chiefs couldn't even define Marxism, couldn't even tell you what taqiyya is, could not describe the difference between the Muslim Brotherhood and Hezbollah or Hamas and its, origins. They don't know Muslim Brotherhood started in 1928, gave birth to Hamas in 87, and CAIR in 1994. They don't know these things. And yet you expect them to solve the problems? Well, if the police aren't going to do it, we know the politicians, many of them aren't. That's police, politicians, and let's go to another P, pastors. Where are they? I said today they should be putting out email alerts, email blasts, text alerts to their congregations saying, let's shop up in advance, folks. Stay away, not be a part of the problem. Let's also make sure we have some senior adults who maybe can't go do their shopping. Let's go help them. Let's get the shopping done early. We don't want senior adults out in the middle of this. We don't need a single mom with her kids out in the middle of this. And I also said, if this starts to spiral and becomes an issue for a while, what are the churches going to do? Have they been so busy building their temples unto themselves, multi-million-dollar buildings? I bet most of them don't have 6 months worth of food for their needy in their own church. I'm not talking about the ministries they might do outside the walls. I'm talking about, do they have 6 months of food, a year's supply of food for the most needy of fixed income, low income, single mom, the senior citizens? If we have a problem, do they even know where their own sheep are? Do they know that, hey, Sister Sally, she's 80 and she's in nursing care. And if we have a blackout in the country, the power goes down, there's probably not going to be enough workers going to the nursing home to care for these people. Are they going to sit there in their soiled undergarments for hours and days? Or are they going to get fed? Are they going to get water? We got to be ready to go check on our own sheep. But you know what? The problem is we have a lot of pastors today that love that title, but they're not pastors. They're hirelings. They don't know where the sheep are. They don't give a rat's rear about the sheep. They only milk the middle class for the dollars, just like the politicians. So if you're counting on the P of police, politicians, and pastors, you're in big trouble because there are very few pastors left. But if we had the country we need, we'd have the politicians speaking up and speaking out right now. We would have the police speaking up and speaking out right now, and we'd have the pastors speaking up and speaking out right now and being prepared to be a part of the solution, not the problem, or engage these leftists in the street that want that. True or false?
I think that's very good analysis, Brannon. Now, I'm not a Mormon, but I'll tell you what, one community that will be prepared and will look after themselves and will look after each other are the Mormon churches, and that they should be commended for that. And I also, it's a benefit living in a red state. Look, when we had the hurricanes in Florida, our local sheriff told any looters they would be shot on sight.
Wow.
And we had virtually no looting. Where it's going to be worse is in the blue states and the big cities in the blue states. I don't think it's going to be a big problem in the rural areas, the conservative areas, because people have guns. People look after themselves a lot better. This is going to be largely a city problem, I think. And you're absolutely right. Where are the pastors saying anything about this? The police should be saying a lot more than they are. I don't hear a lot going on. I've faith that they're watching the community in my area and where in the areas that I live in, in Florida, etc. But if you're living in a big city in California or Illinois, and you can possibly get out of the big city, I think this might be a good time to go. I really think this might be a good time to take a holiday. And look, be prepared. Look after know where your relatives are, know where your families are, and follow your advice. Get your groceries in early. There may not be as big a problem as we expect, but I think it could be pretty serious.
Well, I want to go to the UK again. This is the red-green axis, the Marxists, the Islamists, the Marxists over there, the globalists over there have led in the green. And look at here. This is a violent stabbing that just took place in London, resulting in the death of a 49-year-old man. I bring this up because Elon tweeted today that civil war is coming to the UK. Sadly, it seems to be coming to America. It's being engineered and orchestrated. Look at this. And watch this guy get stabbed over and over and over again. Horrific. Absolutely horrific. And then we have a call that came in to a station in London. I want you to hear what this lady had to say, because again, I think this is all constructive for us in America, because what they're doing to Great Britain, what they're doing to London, I think is what they want to do here in America and are doing. But listen to this woman's desperate plea.
Oh, I live in the borough right next to Hillingdon.
Yep.
And I moved into my house in 2019. My local shop, there's been 3 stabbings, 1 murder since then.
Wow.
My friend was murdered last year up on the high street. Girl I know was murdered in Southall Park. The government are failing us. I'm so scared for my children. I have a 22-year-old son, and I'm begging him to move out of the country.
Let me just stop there. The government didn't fail you, ma'am. The government created this on purpose. They brought in all these Afghan and Islamic and communist refugees on purpose to de-Christianize, destabilize Western societies so they can then offer you the solutions of digital ID, Mr. Tony Blair, mark of the beast type garbage to track your every movement and give everybody a biometric code so we know who's here. They're doing this so you will cry out and accept your digital slavery that you otherwise would not accept. It was not that they failed you. Oh, yes, they did in one sense, ma'am. But they have set you up and allowed your people to be murdered on purpose. Let's continue.
Oh, my goodness. I feel for you.
What are these politicians doing to us? They're putting our children in so much danger. They're putting everyone in danger, and they're not doing nothing to help us.
And that's the thing a lot of us feel. How many is too many?
They're pushing us to do something that we don't want to do. We are peaceful people. British people never vote against their government.
Yeah.
They're going to push us to it because they're not listening to us. Our friends, our family are dying. I had a cousin murdered 20 years ago who was stabbed to death, and nothing has changed, Julia.
I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm sure I speak for everyone listening and watching right now. My heart goes out to you, and that's the reality.
I don't leave the house without a man.
You're that worried.
Well, everyone I know is getting stabbed. They're getting raped in parks. This is where I live, not where the politicians live.
Do you think that's part of the issue, that they don't live in the real world?
Keir Starmer, if you're listening to this, please do something. I'm petrified. I've never broken the law in my life. I've been a law-abiding citizen. I've been a civil servant. Please do something. It's us that are dying on the streets. You talk about being racist. We're not racist. My sister's mixed race. Yeah. I was a white child brought up in a mixed race family. Nothing to do with race.
Exactly.
To do with our safety.
Sarah.
It's to do with ideology, Islam. But she can't say too much. She'd get arrested. The Afghan, the Islamist, the Red-Green Axis, the Labour Party, which is the Fabian Socialist. Remember Fabian Window, George Bernard Shaw, 1910, remold the world nearer to the heart's desire after you put it on a crisis and on fire, which they manufacture?
Keir Starmer is a Fabian. Every British Labour Prime Minister has been a Fabian. Most of his cabinet are Fabians, and Keir Starmer had a personal file in the Czech intelligence service for his youthful Marxism and connections to the Czech, to the Czechs. So yeah, you're right, Brannon. They haven't failed us. The deliberate plan is to create a state of misery and fear. That's what Nechayev, the Russian philosopher who basically gave Lenin his ideas, said. Our goal is to make the working class as miserable as they can possibly be, so they will join us in revolution. So we have to understand malevolence. Most of us live fairly easy lives in a good country, in a good community, and most of us do not really understand evil. But if you've lived in America for the last few years under Joe Biden, and you live in Britain under Keir Starmer right now, and you don't recognize evil, you've got your eyes closed.
Well, our audience recognizes it, and tonight we're asking our audience, do your shopping early. Be aware. Make sure your other friends and family members who maybe aren't plugged into social media or programs like this are aware of what we're talking about. Be a part of the solution, not the problem. Don't get yourself into harm's way. And I'm sorry that we have to be the ones to do it, because the 3 Ps, pastors, politicians, and police, aren't doing their job. Many of them have been co-opted, or they have become basically ignorant by choice. Not all of them, but most of them. It's few and far between that we have any good politicians or police or pastors. That's the sad reality. It is what it is. And so we're here telling you what is likely to happen should they not get the snap turned back on. And it seems as though the goal is not to get it turned on. So you create the crisis, put the people in a conflict, and get them to then offer up their freedom and liberty for the so-called solutions, the manufactured chaos. Take a look at this, trevorloudon.com, trevorloudon.com. You can check out all of his great books, articles, and more right there, trevorloudon.com, trevorloudon.com. As always, Trevor, thank you for your insight and for being with us.
Always good. Thanks, Brannon. It's good to be on a show where you don't have to guard your words and you can say it as it is. That's not very common, and so it's why I enjoy coming on.
Well, that's why we like having you here with us, and our audience appreciates it. We always do great numbers when you're on.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Brannon, and thanks so much to the audience, and keep safe.
Thank you. You too, my friend. We'll be checking back in as this unfolds over the next few days. And folks, if necessary, we'll be live on the air Saturday, Sunday. We will break in. We'll be monitoring all of this throughout the weekend. And with social media, it's easy to do. Our team will come in and work on Saturday and Sunday, or we'll just do a special broadcast as necessary. But again, we're brought to you by you. So thank you for your support, where we can give you unfiltered news. We do not apologize for the truth, and we don't self-censor here, but we do need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Folks, our audience could be even larger if we were to dumb it down. Did you know that? If we were to dumb it down, we would have a bigger audience. If we kept it real simple and used very simple terms, don't talk about the Labor Party, Fabian socialism, communism, Marxism, Islam. Don't be talking about Hamas, Hezbollah. These words, I can barely keep up with all the groups and how they work together. Keep it simple. Just do like Sean Hannity and talk about how evil the Democrats are and how wonderful the GOP and Republicans are, and they're going to save us all. Give people a lot of hopium and false hope, and that tomorrow night there's going to be major breaking news and lots of people doing the perp walk. Wish that never came. Remember that? Yeah, we can gin up a lot of emotion and never really get to the root cause. Or we can actually talk about the worldviews and the ideology, the values. They're, bringing us to where we are today. And so we're not going to cater to people that are an inch deep and a mile wide. We're catering to people that are thinking people, that want to learn, that want to understand reason, logic, context, history, the Bible prophecy. So it is a specifically programmed network that is not about big numbers, but about big truth. But that means we're all going to have to do our part. Because if your audience is huge, then you can bring in a lot of revenue. But if your audience is programmed on truth, not numbers, well, then it gets a little bit tougher. And we're not about to compromise truth for numbers and thus money. So if you appreciate what I just laid out to you, which is our commitment, it's our mission statement, then I'm asking you to support us now. Worldviewfoundation.com. We have to have a big November and December to give us the budgets we need for 2026. Worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. Please consider going there, setting up an automatic contribution if you could. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. And you'll find our phone number. You can leave a voicemail or a text. Melissa, my wife, will get back to you, help you make a contribution over the phone. Worldviewfoundation.com. Thank you. We'll be right back. Would you like to gain access to 36 years of Christian worldview programming, news and information, all my books, ebooks, documentaries, and more? Worldviewtube.com/vault. Worldviewtube.com/vault. Understand the times, where we've been and where we're going. Worldviewtube.com/vault. Get your emergency freeze-dried food and emergency supplies right now at worldviewstore.com. Worldviewstore.com. We sell premium freeze-dried food. This is real food, nutritious food, just freeze-dried. Add hot water, bring it back to life, and consume it. Worldviewstore.com. Worldviewstore.com. I take Bella Grace each and every day. It has 3 powerful ingredients, and it has 80 clinical trials behind it. The results for me personally and many in our viewing audience has been amazing. Check it out. MelissaHouseBG.com. MelissaHouseBG.com. Joining me now is one of our national security experts, David Pyne, president of the EMP Task Force, emptaskforce.us, and he's also at dpyne.substack.com. He is now the president of this organization, of which was led by our mutual friend for so many years, Dr. Peter Vincent Pry. As many of you know, we produced his TV show from this very news desk and his weekly radio broadcast. He passed away about 3 or 4 years ago now. Man, do I wish I could have conversations with him now. But he did thankfully leave us a lot of articles, a lot of research books. I have a big stack of them just a few feet away from me in my bookcase here. But he's also in some of our documentaries. David, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, Brad, great to be with you.
Great to have you with us. I want to go to the topic we've had before, and we're going to discuss it tonight because Vladimir Putin has just successfully tested again Poseidon. I think they've tested it before. So, I mean, we've been talking about it a long time. It's been launched. So I don't know about this whole successful test. I think it's been tested more than once because we've been talking about it since at least 2018, and it's in our documentary from 2019, which I want to play a clip of it, and Putin tonight. But what do you make of the successful test? They've tested it before now.
Yeah, they tested it back in 2022. I think they had more than one test. They deployed 2 Poseidon carrier submarines. They indicated it was operational back in 2022. Maybe that was posturing. But what seems different in this instance is President Putin is declaring that not only was it launched from a carrier submarine successfully, but for the first time it used its nuclear powered system, that enables it to travel at virtually unlimited distances until it runs out of nuclear fuel. So that seems to be the what's new about this test. And if so, this is a very great and potentially existential threat to the U.S. because, as we know, the Russians have boasted they could use it to kill off tens of millions of Americans, particularly along America's Atlantic seaboard. Going in perhaps 50 miles or so with a 1,600-foot tsunami.
Did you just say 1,600 feet?
1,600 feet is what's being reported for a 100 megaton warhead Poseidon missile or torpedo.
And it could do 200, right? As a dial on it, right?
I haven't confirmed that. A lot of media sources are claiming it's only 2 megatons, but it's most likely 100 megatons. But yes, it was reported, I think, by Dr. Peter Pry that it could be up to 200 megatons. So it's very
he
possible
said it had a dial on it.
It has exactly what you say, some kind of dial warhead.
Some kind of dialing, dial it up. All right, let's go to Putin before we go to the clip of Dr. Pry at this very news desk. We filmed that, I think, I have to check when we filmed it. I don't know if we filmed it in 2018 or if we filmed it in I guess we filmed it probably in 2019, and then we released it December 2019. But here is, I don't know, I'll have to double check on that. But we know the documentary came out December 2019, warning about this. And I'm going to play the clip by Putin, and then we'll talk more about why Putin is doing this now. Could it be because of something President Trump said, which when he said it, I cringed the other day because, like you that follow this broadcast, I was thinking about the Poseidon. I'm like, do you really want to say these kind of things when we have the knowledge of the Poseidon, not to mention other things that Russia has? So did President Trump say something, and now it's getting into a tit-for-tat situation, which is not what we should be doing? Watch this from Putin just in the last few hours.
Just yesterday.
Well, they plug in the audio. There's going to be a translator, obviously.
Just yesterday, there was another test of a future weapons system, and that's an unmanned submarine, Poseidon unmanned submarine, with a nuclear power plant. So for the first time, we managed not only to launch it from a carrier submarine, but to start its nuclear power plant, which powered this vessel, underwater vessel, for a certain period of time. This is a huge breakthrough as well, because with all the advantages I mentioned about Burevestnik, this one has a very small power plant, probably 100 times smaller than the nuclear submarine's nuclear reactor. But the power capacity of Poseidon greatly exceeds the power of our longest range intercontinental Sarmat missile, and soon it will be fielded. And Poseidon greatly exceeds Sarmat in capacity and power, and in depth and speeds of underwater propulsion. There are no rivals to it, and there are no ways of intercepting it.
No rivals, no way of intercepting it. And, I think what maybe caused this, just guessing, may have been the fact that Donald Trump came out last week and said, Putin, we have one of our subs off your coast. We don't have to go 8,000 miles, we're off your coast. And I thought when he said that, why do we have to start that? And now we have this. Did you cringe at all when you heard President Trump say that?
Yeah, this is a boast that Trump started making when he had this tiff on X with former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, and it started over tariffs and all his various escalation threats in terms of longer range missiles, up to including Tomahawks, which could range 1,550 miles all over European Russia and potentially hit Moscow itself. And Medvedev reminded Trump that Russia possesses the dead hand or perimeter system, which could be used to unleash all of Russia's deployed strategic nuclear warheads, even if the U.S. was successful in taking out Russia's nuclear command authorities, which would be Russian President Putin, the Chief of the General Staff, of course, and the Minister of Defense. But this is, these kind of threats really are very unproductive on the part of President Trump. And they have produced exactly what you said, this tit for tat, where the Russians are not just threatening, but they're actually demonstrating their capabilities. Now, we haven't confirmed, there's been no public release of confirmation of this test, but given that, it's a torpedo that's can go as deep as 1 kilometer underwater. I mean, it would be very difficult to confirm that test unless we had assets near the test area. So I don't doubt that Russia possesses this capability. I don't doubt that this is an operational Poseidon missile or torpedo. And the U.S., the Trump administration needs to take account of these Russian nuclear capabilities while they continue to escalate unnecessarily this, Biden's war in Ukraine.
Absolutely. I have to sometimes wonder again if President Trump, and we've caught him in a bubble a couple times where the press had to tell him about certain things. I have to wonder if he's in a bubble, and maybe in prior to today's news, that he didn't even know about the Poseidon. Think that's possible?
I think it's unlikely that he has not been informed of the Poseidon's capabilities, given that he's been, present on and off since the time that it was announced in 2018 when President Putin announced 6 different Russian nuclear superweapons, of which 4 are not covered by New START treaty limitations. These are very capable systems. It's certainly possible, but you don't want to believe the president is more in the dark than we are. Just being able to read unclassified open source intelligence about these systems.
Well, let's assume he has been briefed on it then. Has he been briefed on it, but then he's also been told how we're able to thwart it? In other words, he either knows we are not up to par with them, and he just says that we are to bluff, or he really thinks that we have defenses against things like Poseidon, and we're bigger and badder than we are. You think he knows it and is just pounding his chest because he has to as commander-in-chief? Or do you think he really believes this, meaning he's been told a pack of lies by the military-industrial complex?
Well, there's absolutely no defense against this torpedo, so there's no way he's been told that. But certainly, I think that I do think he believes that the U.S. nuclear arsenal is the strongest, and that's really disturbing because that we have so much overwhelming evidence with Russia and China having all of these new strategic nuclear launch systems. I think I counted 15 or more just over the last 30 years, during which time the U.S. has deployed one, the Trident II, which we started deploying in 1992. We're putting all our effort to try to develop and deploy just one single ICBM, the Sentinel ICBM. We don't have any new SLBMs currently in the works, at least none that are openly being developed. Or other strategic launch system, nuclear missile launch systems, delivery systems. And so, just anyone who's has an interest in nuclear weapon systems can determine that the U.S. is much weaker than we've been ever before relative to our enemies, and that this missile gap or nuclear warhead gap continues to increase. During the JFK administration, we had this imaginary missile gap in which we were told the Soviets, were achieving nuclear superiority with more ICBMs than we did, and we built the Minuteman I, deployed that in starting I think in 1961 or 62, that Eisenhower had ordered. But this is a very real gap, and it's not just a small gap. It's a huge gap that really should cause the U.S. to try to make peace with Russia, as Dr. Peter Pry famously urged us to do.
Take a look at this little video simulation. Go to the clip of Dr. Pry from this very news desk. Watch this. Wow, did you notice that? I'm going to go back a little bit here. It looks like that one torpedo was able to take out 6 of our ships.
Yeah, that's the normal complement of a carrier strike group. So that's what the Russians have stated, that in terms of military targets, carrier strike groups would be the primary target. Dr. Peter Pry believed that was not the case, that in fact this weapon was developed to trail and destroy our Ohio-class nuclear ballistic missile submarines from a distance of up to 50 kilometers. So I share that belief. I think this is a nuclear first strike weapon that could be used with devastating results.
And for the lay people, so they understand, that is part of our nuclear triad. The submarines, aircraft, and what's the third one? Rockets, missiles.
ICBMs, land-based ICBMs.
So if you take out the subs, they don't get their nuclear weapons off. So you don't even get that close because you use such a massive weapon that it destroys them, or EMP could also do a lot of damage. But I'm guessing they'd just be destroyed, and then they can't receive signals from part of the nuclear triad, the planes, for their launch commands, correct?
Yeah, it would be destroyed or disabled, most likely not through EMP, but through just kinetic kill, given the size of the warhead and its ability to produce blast waves and pressure waves through the ocean.
All right, let's go to the clip of Dr. Price sitting at this desk. I'm standing next to him, where he was warning about this. And this came out again this documentary came out in December of 2019. It's Siege. It's like 9.5 hours long, isn't it, Logan? The documentary is like 9.5 hours long, and it's I've taken it and written it into a book, and that book will be out in the next week or so, maybe 2 weeks. The new book. So my new book on Hamas is out Friday. My book on Siege, and then my book on sabotage. I'm turning these all into books, and they're being edited right now. And Siege is up next. And you will not have to buy it, folks. If you're a member of the Vault at worldviewtube.com/vault, it will automatically be there in your library as part of your PDFs, your ebooks, your PDFs. You won't have to buy it. Okay? But here's that clip from 2019.
Poseidon, Russia's new doomsday machine. This in itself is amazing. Can you tell us about that one real quick?
Sure. This is a little bit, it is related to EMP, but it's, I thought it was such a remarkable and disturbing new development that I had to write a special report about it. And this is basically a revolutionary new weapon that the Russians are developing, and they're about to deploy it. What they've done is they've built the most powerful nuclear weapon in history. It has a yield of 100 megatons. And this is 10,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. And they've put it in a robotized submarine. That is a submarine that has no crew. It's a robot submarine that's designed to guide itself underwater. And it's got artificial intelligence so that it could, we're not sure, they advertise it as being to create radioactive tsunamis, because a 100 megaton weapon would create potentially enormous tsunamis, 100 yards high, that are radioactive to flood the eastern seaboard. I'm not sure that that's the real reason. That might be disinformation. I think that there are two more realistic purposes to this machine. One is to track our ballistic missile submarines, because we don't have that many of them that are left on day-to-day deployment. We only have about 4 to 6 of our ballistic missile submarines out at sea. And the reason the Soviet Union never launched a nuclear war against us during the Cold War is they couldn't figure out how to get those ballistic missile submarines. They could destroy our land-based missiles, they could destroy our bombers, but the submarines were the one thing they couldn't get. However, if they were able to track our submarines with this Poseidon robot armed with a 100 megaton warhead, I mean, that will have a lethal radius potentially of hundreds of kilometers against our submarines. It could take the last of our subs out. The other thing is, it could be also, in addition to using it for a submarine, the real purpose of the 100 megaton bomb, could be for a high altitude EMP attack. as a way of getting the submarines, because that will generate what's called the E3 EMP, and it would penetrate the oceans, and it could couple into the electronics of submarines and destroy them that way. And so they could have this twofold way, going after them directly with blast from this Poseidon robot sub, but also using the 100 megaton weapon to blast the oceans to put an EMP on the oceans to get the submarines. The bottom line of this thing, though, that what makes me most concerned about it, it is the first time that a nuclear superweapon and artificial intelligence have been married together. And it's like the science fiction, like Terminator, these movies that have been warning us, the Forbin Project that goes back to the 70s, that have been warning for years about artificial intelligence being combined with superweapons as posing a threat to humanity. Coming real, it's actually here. That kind of science fiction scenario is actually here in Poseidon, and this is the first one.
Wow. What do you make of that, David?
Yeah, I know he's absolutely right. I mean, it is very scary that, we have an AI-powered nuclear superweapon. What if the AI was, went haywire and these things were on patrol and somehow, it got hijacked by some kind of Russian hardliner or something, or, it was used accidentally and took out all multiple submarines, nuclear missile submarines on the U.S. side and carrier strike groups, because it does have that potential. If they were kind of focused in a similar area that not too far from each other, it could take out not just an entire carrier strike group, but much more. Especially where Dr. Pry assessed that it would have a super EMP effect, potentially hundreds of kilometers or so. This really needs to drive Trump's reset of U.S. Russian relations. And again, we've discussed how we really had a deal. Trump and Putin had a deal on the table, ready to sign at the Anchorage summit, and he kind of backed out and said, I need to talk to Zelensky and the EU leaders again, because when I talked to him a few days ago, they didn't seem to like it. I mean, who cares what they like, what they want? We need to do what's best for U.S. national security interests, and that is to take a nuclear war with Russia off the table with a comprehensive peace agreement along the lines that Trump envisioned to end the war in Ukraine.
Let's switch over to Venezuela. We're getting reports now that more than 3 million Venezuelans have joined militias since the U.S. military buildup, bringing the total number up to 8 million people, not including regular members of the military. You believe that?
I find it hard to believe that they could have that number of troops, even reserve and militia troops, out of a population of 30 million. I would believe 3 million, maybe even 4.4 million, that, like they said, of militia troops. But 8 million, I think we're just getting into just propaganda. I don't think that's possible.
Okay, so let's go with 3 million, right? That's still a big force. What do you think is going on there? We're threatening, I guess, to kill him, Maduro. Apparently, our government was trying to convince his pilot to take his plane, fly to the U.S. and let us arrest him. We're now getting reports that Russia is moving heavy equipment. I think we have a picture of something here. That Russia is moving heavy equipment into Venezuela. I'm assuming you've heard that report today as well, correct?
I hadn't heard the report today, but I've heard other reports of a large Russian plane, transport landing in Venezuela that have potentially hypersonic or supersonic anti-ship missiles. We know that they have Su-30s that can carry long-range Russian supersonic anti-ship missiles that travel at a speed of Mach 3. So those, and there's been reports from a friend of mine, Brandon Howse, saying that Venezuela may have a lot more Russian supersonic anti-ship missiles than that, not just 20, but perhaps in the thousands, a few thousand, up to 5,000. So even if they have dozens of those, that could potentially result in hitting and disabling, the USS Gerald Ford, and taking out one of our carriers. likely wouldn't sink it, but they could potentially disable it, cause it to catch fire, and then it would have to limp away. And that would be a huge prestige loss for the U.S. That I'm not sure Trump would be justified in risking.
Heavy Russian cargo plane lands in Caracas amid U.S. Venezuelan tensions. That would be northern Venezuela, Caracas. Now we're hearing that maybe the Russian, a group known as the Wagner Group, has landed in Venezuela. Here we have what appears to be Putin having sent the Wagner mercenaries to Caracas to help Maduro. Again, what do you think is brewing there, if these reports are true?
Well, I think President Trump ultimately, he's actually, if you read reports way back to 2017, his very first year as president, he talked about how the Venezuelans, regime of Nicolas Maduro was numbered. Their days were numbered. And that's something that Marco Rubio has trumpeted as one of his top foreign policy objectives since before he became Secretary of State. So I think Rubio is he's kind of the power behind the throne in terms of foreign policy. I think he has carte blanche authority on foreign policy, and Trump listens to him and pretty much does whatever he says. We saw that with the torpedoing of the Budapest summit, which according to Bloomberg was Rubio's baby in terms of him being the one to have convinced Trump that it wasn't worth meeting with President Putin, even though he did have this tentative peace deal on the table in which Russia had offered to in exchange for the Donbass region, they give up 2/3 of their territorial demands and agreed to a general ceasefire. That was a very favorable deal for the U.S. and Zelensky. I think it's not too late to salvage that. But the very fact that Trump has moved forward, with all these militant threats against Russia, when he has a peace deal in reach, and is basically doing Zelensky's bidding and Rubio's bidding and refusing it, is very troubling from a U.S. national security perspective.
So what do you think could happen with Venezuela? Do you see us getting involved, boots on the ground, making airstrikes, and then boots on the ground? What do you see?
Well, I think Lindsey Graham had it right, and that the next step is airstrikes against Venezuelan targets. Could be air defense systems, that we would see certainly anti-ship missiles, taking out their Su-30s that have these anti-ship missiles that they can carry. Anything that would pose a threat to U.S. naval and amphibious forces going in, as well as U.S. aircraft. So if we see that, then we know that some kind of invasion, amphibious invasion or air assault invasion is likely in the works. The goal, of course, would be regime change. It would be to overthrow Maduro, and likely to do so with the smallest number of troops possible, kind of using the Iraq War II as a model, which we used as few as 100,000 troops to get rid of Saddam when he had 400,000 Iraqi troops to defend the country that essentially he ordered not to resist and melt away.
Could we find ourselves fighting Venezuela, China, Hezbollah, Russia, all on Venezuelan soil?
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, we've already, Trump boasted about bombing Wagner mercenaries in Syria. He bombed about, said he killed or injured, I think, hundreds of Russian Wagner mercenaries. I'm not sure if that boast was true, but certainly some, Russian mercenaries were killed in Syria in the U.S. bombing strikes during his first term. So I think Russia and China do have boots on the ground in Venezuela. I don't think they have large number of troops. But Russia and China have every reason to try to defend the Maduro regime from U.S. invasion and to try to maximize their casualties. So we're doing the same thing to Russia. I mean, Russia, of course, has the most motivation to try to sink some U.S. aircraft carrier, kill thousands of Marines, shoot down a lot of our planes. And those are all very real possibilities. And I think that, we shouldn't underestimate the potential for kind of a Vietnam-style war. I think.
Well, that was my next question. That's interesting you said that, because that was my next question. Are we going to get bogged down there in something like Vietnam?
Well, the potential is certainly there. We should, if we were to withdraw our troops from the Middle East and Europe, and reduce our footprint in the Western Pacific as well, I wouldn't be so opposed to it. But the problem is, just like the U.S. Navy is scattered all across the world. China has all their Navy concentrated against Taiwan. Venezuela has a lot of, they have a lot of troops. They don't have a lot of firepower. They have, I think, 120 modern Russian tanks, maybe double that in terms of infantry fighting vehicles. Obviously, their Air Force, I think, is maybe 80 modern fighters at most, and some attack helicopters. So, in terms of capabilities, I think if we brought enough troops to bear, we could certainly defeat them. The problem is, they probably, their army would withdraw to the countryside, and we could be fighting, an insurgency war that could last a decade. But even worse, it could be a situation like Libya, where we have kind of the western half is pro-Western, and the eastern half is pro-Russian, and that could just go on for years.
All right. Nothing short to talk about tonight, is there? dpine.substack.com, dpine.substack.com. You'll find all his latest articles, including one on the Poseidon as well. As always, David, thanks for making time for us.
Thanks, Brad. Always a pleasure.
You too, my friend. David Pyne checking in, dpine.substack.com. We'll be right back after this very short break. Go to worldviewtalk.com. Get your satellite phone like I have, because you know what? China is in on our power grid. That is a matter of proven fact. If you want to have communications with your loved ones, your family, your children, maybe your spouse travels, maybe you have a child away at college, you want communication should the grid go down. That's why you need a satellite phone, worldviewtalk.com. But look what else they have. They also have solar generators. I have one of their solar generators. I have the Delta Echo 400, a solar generator. So I can, of course, charge my satellite phone. I can run my coffee pot. I can run my whole house if I want to. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com, or use that number, 1-866-738-3224. They have very friendly operators that will explain to you their products, but you can explain to them what it is you're desiring to acquire. How much electricity are you wanting to generate with this solar generator? Well, they'll tell you what size you need. Worldviewtalk.com or 1-866-738-3224. Joining me now is Michael Weiner. The Federal Reserve has, for the second time this year, cut interest rates. And I guess more is to come. The gold market has really not responded to this. It is going to create more inflation, I'm sure, because it's, again, making available more credit, digits, if you will, creating money in a thin air. The question is, what will this do, if anything, for gold, silver, and the economy? Joining me now is Michael Weiner. Michael, I don't think if they cut interest rates, you're going to see a huge jump into housing. I know some are saying that, and I thought that for a while. But after talking with you, after talking to Mitch Wexler, many of you are thinking that for the average home buyer, it's not just the interest rates, it's the price of the homes. Bringing the interest rates down is not going to make much of a difference because the homes are still too overpriced for most home buyers, particularly first-time or second home buyers. True or false?
Absolutely. I totally agree with Mitch. Not only is there collusion with this whole property tax situation, that's a disaster, but there's been collusion, and I said on a show 8 months ago, 8 months ago, and these realtors are just pushing these prices. They shot themselves in the foot for what they've done to this entire real estate market across the country. In a lot of places where the prices are absolutely ridiculous, how does a first-time buyer come up with the necessary deposit to buy a house for $500,000 as their first starter home? My first starter home was $30,000. I mean, the reality is everything is relative, but for the prices, for example, a house here in Arizona in March of 2020, at the beginning of COVID, could have been $300,000. 4 years later, it's $900,000. Why? because Arizona became a hotspot because during COVID, and they just didn't let go of it. And it's gone on that way all around the country. And right now, the people don't, as we discussed privately, Brandon, people don't have the money nor the inclination. It's cheaper for them to rent. They get all the accolades without bearing any of the costs. And it's becoming very apparent to people, maybe the American dream is to be rich enough to rent, because then you have somebody else bearing all of the costs and upkeep, and you can enjoy the fruits of their labor, actually.
So how many more rate cuts do you expect this year?
I think there's a good chance there's going to be another one in December. I just think that we're seeing, you would think it would look at it as a positive, but the stock market went down afterwards. So why? Because they're concerned about the inflation that kicks off, and they're also concerned about the currency. And I think also that ties into the situation of the shutdown. Shutdown is absolutely gone berserk. So, and I think you're going to see something very interesting if this communist, heretic, Muslim lunatic gets put into power in New York City. I'm looking at two things as somebody who had friends that died in World Trade Center. 25th anniversary is in 2026, and they're going to have an idiot communist, heretic, Muslim as the mayor overseeing that event when he turned around and said the United States deserved it. I mean, this is a very bad period of time in this country. And I think that a lot of people are thinking twice, at least especially a younger person, about buying a home. I have a son. One of my sons could more than afford to buy a home right now. And he said, I'm not paying that price, Dad. We're not doing it. It's got to correct itself. It doesn't make sense. And I think that's the way a lot of younger people are thinking. It's just absolutely outrageous. And it's being upheld by, you come back to your realtor and they'll realize, well, the appraiser is holding up with that price. The appraisal is, my answer is, I don't care what his appraisal is. That's all based on false numbers all around the neighborhood. And meanwhile, none of these people are selling houses. The ones that are have a realtor come in, list their house, and then 3 months later, as they become more desperate, tells them to cut the price by 20 or 30%, and then they have a fire sale. So that's a lot of things, but some of the young people are waiting now. You have a very upwardly not mobile situation, and you have an inverted, crazy marketplace, and that is going to have an effect. That's the American dream gone bad.
Yep. American dream gone bad. All right. So where are we at with gold? Gold is down under $4,000 now. Silver is down around, $48 and some odd cents.
Yeah.
Where do you see this going? I mean, is it going to get a little floor here in the pullback and then get ready to go back up, or what?
Well, first of all, pardon me, gold went up almost nonstop for, almost 8 weeks. And as I said before in one of the shows, we need a correction. It's healthy to have a correction. It's very healthy for the market because it allows it to build a base. If you remember what happened when it hit 3,000 or 2,000, it drifted below and then came back and built the base. So I'm expecting it could go down in the mid 3,800s, but I think that there'll be a kick up before year end. I think it'll be tied into this new CR that's coming up in November. I think that when Trump returns, he's got to get the Republicans to take action, and I think that the U.S. dollar is going to be in a horrible shape. And plus, we have interest payments on our debt and other things that has to be dealt with, and we don't have anybody working at the Treasury Department. There's a lot of things on the table right now that would point to gold hitting. I think you got to understand, the people who make money in the market, the people in New York and Chicago make a fortune when they push the market down. These guys legitimately took advantage of knowing that there was going to be a correction and ran it even further because you're not talking about making $1 million like Governor Pritzker, who went to gamble. That's another interesting story when they're talking about the mob running gambling and he made $1 million. Maybe he's the mob. But back to this. If they can run the market down $300 in gold, somebody made hundreds of millions of dollars when that happens. So I think that will stabilize itself. And I think year-end gold will be over 4,000. Might move towards 4,100. But I think the market will stabilize itself. But you might see a little bit of a drawback here. But it's all healthy for all you people out there on gold. Don't get nervous. It's time to buy, really, because it's down for no fundamental reason. And by the time it turns itself around, you'll pay more and get less. That's all.
A friend called me today, said their wife has about $200,000 in gold. And I said, does she have the physical possession? He said, no, it's somewhere on the East Coast. I said, does she have the serial numbers for each bar? He said, I don't know. He called to ask what, she should do, because she was getting phone calls from people saying this would be a great time to sell. So some gold company was trying to get her to sell it. And he's like, what do you think? And I said, well, do you have your house paid off? Yeah, we have no debt. So, okay, good. I said, well, my first concern is she doesn't have serial numbers to go with her gold. So does she actually own physical gold, or does she own a promissory note? Because when the music stops, she gets nothing. So I said, that's what you need to go do. So that he hung up and he was going to go try to find out, does she actually own physical gold in a vault, or does she own paper as a promise? Otherwise, I say you probably need to take possession of it and then lock it away yourself. Or you could, go buy a piece of rental property, pay cash. But of course, the market he's in, good luck. In our market, yeah, you could come very close to buying a good rental property for $250, $265 that you could cash flow with no debt. But yeah, he was calling because his wife is getting phone calls from a gold dealer wanting her to cash out.
Well, they're not wanting her necessarily to cash out. I guarantee you they want her to swap out. If they're doing anything at all, they're calling her and telling her to swap out.
For what?
And if they tell for other metal, maybe to silver, go to silver or something like that. So there's two things either.
Because he said they were trying to get her to sell, and she was
they're going to charge her a stiff fee to buy back,
and then she was going to have to decide what to do with the money.
Yeah, well, she's going to pay a stiff fee to buy back, and right now we're finding the opposite. We've got worldview people calling us that bought elsewhere that can't get liquid. There's companies out there, and I won't mention names, that are not buying back.
That's what I told him.
Advertise on TV. I mean, so for somebody, I find it sort of questionable, since a lot of these people, when people think they get it less for more, they're finding out that they can't sell it back. And then a lot of the dealers that they're out there will call Swiss America to buy back their metal because they don't have any money. We do. So the reality is there's a big mix. First of all, when you're talking about taking delivery of your metal, I've said a long time ago that the biggest way I've seen people ripped off is by having somebody store their metals. And in IRA, you have no choice. You have to have it stored because the government that looks at you as taking delivery as a cash distribution. If you can set up honest depository relationships, that's fine. But if you're dealing with a gold company, like I had somebody from Worldview talking to me about storing gold out of America, storing gold in England, storing gold in Canada. Well, excuse me. Read customs laws, ladies and gentlemen. Try to bring gold and silver back into the United States. First of all, you can do it. The fine or the fee you're going to pay is excessive. And if you sell out in the countries of question, they're going to pay you in their currency, not the U.S. dollar that you put in. There was a famous deal out years ago with Perth Mint. There was a guy who was pushing it, who was very prominent. These guys disappear and then they show back up years later as great individuals who sold people gold in the Perth Mint. And there was a lady I had that had $3 million of it there and wanted to get it out, bring it back home. And she couldn't get it out. And she called us up and she was asking me for my advice. I said, ma'am, you can't do anything. First of all, Australia is not going to let you take the gold out. It's a law there. You can't take it out. And secondly, that's another question, if they're going to let you sell it or take the money out. And she just sits back and said, well, why didn't somebody tell me this? And I said, probably because, would you have bought it? Sometimes life is easy in black and white when you deal with reputable firms, and that's what we are. You know, sometimes people say, oh, yeah, I've talked to Johnny Jones Company and he'll sell it for 10 cents less. Good luck. And then when the problem happens later and you find out that you bought something that was questionable or that you bought something that they won't buy back, that's where we don't have a problem. Our clients and our people, and especially our people with Worldview and others, know that they can call upon us and they're liquidating $1,000, $10,000, or $1 million. It's taken care of. And immediately, liquidity with us, unless you come here, is usually 3 to 4 to 5 days tops, just because it takes time to get the metal to us. But that's it. We buy back because we want your metal. But you know, this is something that your friend might have a little bit more of a dilemma. There's always been problems with companies that store for individuals. And remember Larry Bates?
Yep.
And his son who are in prison?
Yep.
Look at all the people who lost a fortune of money because of the fact that they sat back and gave Larry that money. And realistically, I have one client that fortunately just got out by the skin of her teeth, but other people lost millions, 16, 18, $20 million. I don't know. Him and his son, I think, got out of prison finally. But these type of entities are a terrible way to do business. And, you know, that's where it comes into, you know, dealing with reputable firms. And I don't want to say anything other than the fact that I would not hang my name anywhere except here, period.
Yeah. All right, folks, you want your free packet. We have the website, worldviewgold.com, worldviewgold.com. We have a new phone number, folks, a new phone number. So discard the old number. Only use this number, please, now, 877-864-1072. Leave your voicemail with your name and address, and the office will get that filled and that free packet out to you, or fill out the form on our website, worldviewgold.com, or 1-877-864-1072, 1-877-864-1072. As always, Michael, thank you for the financial update.
My pleasure. Good night, Dolly. See you later.
It's actually Dolly and Lily tonight. Can we get a shot of this, guys? Our little black schnauzer? Surely somebody can come in and turn the camera, right?
Oh, I see Lily.
Oh, yeah. We need to get a close-up of this.
I see Dolly's back. She's
yes, we're going to get a close-up. Hang on. We're going to get a close-up. This one is worth showing because Lily is our little black schnauzer who's 11 now. We thought she was on her last leg last week, but she rebounded the next day. There she is.
Look at Dolly.
And Dolly loves her. She's afraid of the little black dog, to be honest. Yesterday, I put her food down for her, and I walked back around the corner, and Dolly had backed up and was letting Lily eat her food. I'm like, what is wrong with you? And I took my foot and pushed the bowl toward Dolly. That little black dog rules the roost. She is the one in charge. She's the alpha dog. But Dolly is kind to her and lets her share a bed in the studio. So she comes in and sleeps there with her sometimes.
Outstanding.
That's Lily and Dolly, our two studio dogs. So there you go.
All right.
How are the cats doing, Michael?
Yeah.
How are the cats?
Oh, they're living the life.
Did you get into the new house?
I've been in the house since March, actually.
Okay, so they got their catio.
They have their catio. They go out there and hang out, and they see little animals and go crazy, but nobody can get in, and they just have a lot of fun out there. They enjoy their little catio, that's for sure.
Well, you're very nice to your kitties.
You're not kidding.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Probably treated better than most children, right?
That's true. Just with a cat, any cat owner out there knows one thing: you're the pet.
You're the pet. That's so true. That's so true. All right, they have you trained well. All right, thank you, Michael.
Good night.
All right, guys, what a broadcast tonight. Please go now to worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com, and support us so we can keep going. Let's roll the music. Let's call it a night. Wow, Dinesh D'Souza, Trevor Loudon, David Pyne, Michael Weiner. What a broadcast tonight. Do you appreciate what we do? Do you appreciate the fact we're so consistent in programming here? We've been doing this now almost 36 years. 2026, that'll be 36 years I've been doing this. professionally broadcasting since 1995. We have a proven track record, folks. So support us, won't you? Worldviewfoundation.com or join our vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. My new book on Hamas, October 7th, comes to America, comes out this Friday. You don't have to buy it. It's part of your vault membership, worldviewtube.com/vault. May God save America. Take care.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon Howse.